we've actually come to the end of my questions, but not the end of your questions.
Okay.
I'm going to open up the floor for anything you'd like to ask. Just a few, just one quick note, because we're recording this session for the people who don't have a chance to see it, and it'll be up on YouTube and also I think on the C42 website. So we'd request that you use the microphones that the staff provide and speak into it so we can hear what you're saying. But do you have any questions for Alfian? Anyone?
Yes. Wow. You broke the customary 30-second Singaporean lull.
Better get it in before you're overwhelmed with questions. The Return of the Repressed sounds like a very good next work, actually. So this is a question in regards to what you are working on and whether there are any specific interests at the moment.
At the moment?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. The artistic ones or the not so?
Oh, well, anything you like to say.
Yeah. So I'm working on a little piece, a monologue piece with Siti Khalijah as part of the Singapore Writers Festival. So we're going to do a little bit of a journey through acting. She's a very interesting actress for me, personally. Yeah. So, yeah. I really do feel she's one of the most gifted actresses of her generation, and I think just a flashback, when I first did Nadira and I wanted her to be the lead role is called Nadira, yeah. And I asked, hey Siti, I would love to have you in this, and the character, she's Vice President of Muslim Society in NUS, and the first question she asked me was, do you think I can handle it? And I asked why, and she said, oh, but the character's an NUS student, you know, I only went through ITE, she said, yeah. And I mean, she's so gifted, right? So it made me think, like, maybe with another kind of education system that recognizes multiple intelligences, she would be in a gifted stream, you know? And it made me wonder also about, I mean, you leave school, but does school ever leave you? And the kinds of marks that they leave, you know, leave on you, you know, self-consciousness. You're just sharing, I mean, the first day putting on an ITE uniform, you know, perhaps not a lot of us can have that experience, but you know, the self-consciousness that comes in that, taking public transport, observing who else is wearing that uniform, making sure, policing that they are well behaved so that, you know, people won't develop certain stereotypes about IT kids. So, yeah. So that's one project. That's going to be in November at the Arts House. I also have bits and pieces of stand-up comedy, whatever, for like Rice Ball and all that. Yeah, it makes me wonder also. I mean, I also do works like Mina and China, and then I look at my peers, and then I see like Ziqian, Chong Ziqian, and Natalie Hannah-Dicke, and all quite serious artists. And then I'm like, I mean, Mina and China just pure entertainment lah, you know. And then I do pantomimes and all that, and just wonder, does it affect my artistic credibility, you know? Do these things sort of, I don't know, yeah.
I think we have one question. Yeah, Dan.
Yes.
Hi, Alfian.
Dan.
Thanks to you and Corrie for this. The sense that I get from this sort of mini retrospective or look back, the overriding sense is how freaking prolific you are. Not just from a young age, but you know, in different forms, in different genres, and different topics. And my question is actually quite depressing, but haven't you ever been like disillusioned? You know, it doesn't really seem to be, even when you were studying, you know, you're still writing, whether it's reviews or poetry or plays. I mean, as a writer, do you view your craft as simply like just another job in that sense? How do you sort of avoid the kind of silencing pitfalls of writing, maybe?
What do you mean by disillusionment, then?
Maybe like, well, okay, if we look at Singapore writing, maybe, the sense that I get is that a lot of playwrights in particular, you know, they have a play or two and then they stop. They kind of like go into the real world almost. I mean, you can see this in novelists and poets as well. Was there a point when you were like even thinking, you know, is this the path for me?
Right, yeah. Wow. I think I look back and wonder why I'm still writing, and I think because I have the baggage of leaving medical school to do it, so there's really a sense of, wow, I in a sense gave up what could have been a stable, secure career with symbolic capital in the Malay community. Oh look, another Malay doctor, we can make it. To do this other thing. So it really felt that, the stakes were high and I really had to be the best at what, I had to give my best for this, but it's also a calling, I feel, It's one of those, like, I didn't choose playwriting chose me. However cliche that sounds. But I always feel that there are always stories that need to be told. So that keeps me going. Not just stories that need to be told, but the way we tell stories are also important, and the way we interpret stories. So I think the aim is, I want to make Singapore bigger. I think a lot of people who are activists and artists and all that, I think that's the shared wish that we have. And not just in terms of reclamation, increasing land size, right? But making Singapore bigger is about creating that space, creating room for all kinds of narratives that can coexist. It's not like a battle of battle the people, the loudest voices, those narratives. We want all the other narratives to also surface, I think, and that makes Singapore bigger. Thank you. Yes.
Question at the back?
Hello. You were talking about censorship, which I
Yes.
actually found very interesting. Because that time censorship is regulated, but when you move into areas like Facebook, it's a different ballgame, you see. But how do you personally have to deal with this whole Singaporean idea of self-censorship?
How have I had to deal with it? I think the thing about self-censorship is that it operates at a level where often you're not so conscious about. So I think the only defense against that is to always be hyper aware, because I can see how easily sometimes, for example, let's say you're in a newsroom. Sorry to use this example.
It's okay.
but an editor tells you, you shouldn't write that way, or I have to spike your story, because, and it's not censorship, it's responsible journalism. It's very easy to internalize these things and without realizing. So for me, I suppose when I write, I find ways to confront what are my limits? What are the things that I can or cannot say? And then I will think to myself, I will question myself, why? Why am I not saying it? Is it because of a certain fear about something? Yeah. But I think it's always important to assess your own limits, to do a self-examination and then to squat over a mirror and is that the right image? To examine yourself, basically, and see what are the unsayable. If someone asks you a question, I see some people scowling, didn't quite like that image. Just sit down. People can ask you also, what is a play that you would never write, for example, and why? It's good to have those discussions.
Anyone else?
That's a good question. What is a play you will never write?
She asked, what is a play you'll never write?
I will never write.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. I will never write. Wow, it's gonna sound completely PC, but I think same thing also. The general rule in stand-up comedy, right? Never punch down. I won't write stuff that will denigrate already vulnerable minorities in society. Obviously, I won't write stuff that will make fun of women or poor people or gay people, disabled people. I think that would be my limit. I don't know whether it's self-censorship, but I think yeah, we all have those kinds of limits. Yeah. Unless it's for a very specific provocation or something, but otherwise I don't see myself.
I think we have one question here. Yeah.
Hi. I think you had mentioned that you take a very writerly approach to your work, so
Yes.
not so much, perhaps more writing than directing or acting, as you said. I'm aware you've been doing some translations recently as well, and I guess that would be a form of interacting with other people's work. So could you talk a little about your experience with translation? Thanks.
Yeah. So I realized that I was doing translation even earlier than I thought, because when you work with a Malay theatre company with a small budget, you end up being the subtitlist as well. So already from early on, I realized I was translating my own work. Yeah, it's only later that I would translate works by other Malay writers. So I do translation from Malay to English mostly. Yeah, it's always interesting to try to get under the skin of another writer. There are times when it can be almost erotic. Although I don't think either Isa Kamari or Muhammad Latif Muhammad
Whose works he has translated.
whose works I've translated would approve of that kind of adjective. But it's always interesting to have a kind of dual consciousness when you're translating, to sort of be and not be this writer.
Any other questions we have about maybe 10 minutes, so we have time for a couple more questions. Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned about it's important to keep watching, and watching is important. When you mentioned keep watching, you were talking like watching your colleagues or fellow playwrights work. But that's kind of like really difficult, because when you're producing, you don't really have that much time to watch others work, right?
Of course.
So can you expand a bit on why do you think it's important, and how do you do that? Because you don't have time.
Given the limitations of time and all that, right? Yeah. How do you do that? I suppose because maybe it's easier for playwrights. Maybe it's easier for playwrights because you can take that break from writing. You can tell yourself, okay, every day I will write, but stop by 6 to 10. That's going to be watching plays time or something. But I understand that directors and actors, will have a bit more, difficulties with that. That said, though, actors, because they do so many plays with different theatre companies, that's already a form of education, I feel. Yeah. So I urge, maybe I should modify that. I urge playwrights, you have no excuse, unless you're the really die must write at 8 p.m. kind.
What's the most recent play you watched that was not your own?
Sifa.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I went to watch Hamlet last weekend.
Just curious.
Hamlet and The Last Supper and Everything by My Side.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
How did being the model minority and like coming from Raffles affect the way you represented the characters like from the Malay community, and how do you make sure that you represented them like accurately? Coming from such a different background.
Right. Yeah. So very, very good question. I think as writers, there's always that consciousness about, are you representing something accurately? Are you appropriating something, fairly? I came from quite a working class background. Yeah. So I mean, there's Raffles, but when I came from sort of maybe lower. I wouldn't say even middle class, working class, yeah. So my father was a policeman at the Port Singapore Authority. Seems like outlining my street cred, right? Tampines boy. Isn't it annoying that people call Joseph Schooling Bedok Boy? Like, he's okay, but his father spent $1 million on... Okay lah, Bedok Boy. Okay, Tampines Boy. My father's a policeman. My mother used to work in a factory. She used to repair typewriters. So one day she brought back a typewriter and yeah, I was so fascinated with it. And she blames that for me for liking writing so much. So yeah, she worked in factories. So I listening to her stories, I really get a glimpse of what life on a factory floor was like. Also my dad. So I suppose credit to the Singapore education system that I went to Tampines Primary School, whatever, did pretty well for PSLE. Went to these elite schools, but even in those schools, I was still quite conscious of being from not a well-to-do kind of background. That consciousness was always there. And also being Malay in a school like RI. So my batch, there were like maybe only 13 of us Malay kids. And every one of us had to join Malay Cultural Club. Everyone. It was by default. Okay? So here I was, like zero coordination, right? Being made to do DK Barat. So people would face here and I would face the other side. It was really, yeah. And then, these things strike you. So you're there, and then you see a lot of all these Malay older men, hanging around the canteen, sitting on the curbside, and you're like, hey, how come so many my people here? And then you realize they were chauffeurs waiting for the rest of your schoolmates. So I think, always sort of being conscious of being slightly outside is a good thing, I think, for an artist. For a writer, yeah. I always feel that if you're a straight Chinese male in Singapore, good luck to you for your artistic journey. You better have straight Chinese. You better have something damn interesting to say, okay? Or you become a formalist, right? You really work with form and you break new ground. But otherwise, Any other questions? Sorry, Tim.
I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. Yes, Robin.
What are you reading now, Alfian?
What am I reading now?
What are you reading now?
I like to juggle books, yeah. So one of the books that I'm completely outgassing over is actually there's this book which is William Farquhar's collection of natural history drawings.
So beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm dipping into that, yeah, before I sleep these days. What else? There's also a novel by Jessica Hagedorn, who's a Filipino writer. I'm reading that because I'm going to a literature festival in New York next month.
Is this the Singapore Literary
Yes,
yeah.
The one that Ji Liam is organizing.
Will you consider writing a novel sometime?
Aiyo. How many hyphens you want me to have? Already poet, playwright, one hyphen, then fiction, novelist, is it? I don't know. I feel though that I'm more a sprinter than a marathon runner at this point of time in my life. So yeah, I tend to really write in short bursts, but I will stay up for like 2 days and get these panda eyes when I'm in the grip of a writing trance. But I do write short bursts. I don't know whether I have the discipline to, go and lay out notes, paste on your wall, have Kevin fever for like three years, working on a novel. But it's a good excuse if you don't want to hang out, right? Like, why don't you hang out with us and I'm working on a novel? Okay. Why don't we see you at the clubs? Oh, novel, okay.
Do you have any other questions from you guys? Yes.
Hi. Hello. Yeah. I'm curious about your research process. For example, in Hotel, there's very diverse characters. How do you nail them accurately, like she mentioned, and their voice?
Right. I think to start with, I had an amazing ensemble of actors. Yeah. So I think we did a lot of devising, a lot of improvisations. But of course, research is also very, very important. I can't stress that enough. And I can't stress the fact that actually artists, we also got rigor, you know. I can't stress that enough because looking back, I realized that I came from a system where if you want to enter arts, there's like low, the people with the better points will go into science. And then arts would be, people would think it's just, for a dumping ground, right? There's like, and then people who would mix their science and their arts would be said to be taking odd combination, just because, people out there can't imagine synthesizing these things. So, so when I mean rigor, of course, there's a whole lot of research you have to do. There are shortcuts, of course, in the sense that meeting people helps a lot. So I actually met a couple of historians in my research for this book, And if you look at plays written overseas, whatever, if it's a play about physics, for example, Michael Frayn, Copenhagen, right? You will see that acknowledgements, wow, he's gone to meet whichever chair of physics, etc. So very important to have all that research. But, historical research, I realize, speak to a historian who will give you lots of leads. Yeah, there's a shortcut. And honestly, I mean, one thing I'm hopeful for in Singapore is as much as we think, at the top, people are still wanting to concentrate power and we don't have Freedom of Information Act, etc. But there's a lot of information these days and lots of resources. So National Archives, a lot of the interviews are now online. You don't even have to go to National Archives. Newspaper SG is an amazing, amazing resource. And one of my favorite things to do with that is to look at newspaper articles about that are like one day before 9th of August, for example. One day before racial riots on the 22nd July. Very, very interesting. So go back and look at that. 21st July, 1964, before the Sino-Malay riots, right? There's an article that says, so there were all these Malay organizations who met Lee Kuan Yew. And the headline is, "We are against you, Lee Kuan Yew, not the Chinese." It's very, very interesting, So a lot of digging up that we can do, I mean, this is one of those things that, it's people say, it's so depressing sometimes to be involved in arts activism because one step back, two steps.
Two steps back,
two steps back.
One step forward.
Yeah, okay.
One step forward,
one step forward, two steps back, yes. Or walking on the travelator from the opposite side also is another image, right? But I do believe that because, so much there's a lot of information that I feel has been liberalized, has been freed, and it is our responsibility to go deeper, actually, in our artistic explorations. It's all out there.
I think we can take one last question.
Yes.
In the beginning, right, when the media was kind of painting you like the model and someone who everyone should kind of look up to, and later when you actually started speaking out, in your works and stuff, do you kind of feel that you were sort of being like ungrateful or something? And like, how did it affect you in your thoughts and how you felt about yourself and your worldview and your perspectives and everything like that?
So ungrateful to...
As in, that's what I'm thinking, because we are in like this kind of society, right, where they kind of give you this advantage and like this program where you can have a mentor and you kind of excel in their system, which was PSLE, which kind of gave you the opportunity to go to sort of like what is perceived to be a good school. So in terms of that, would you feel like you didn't agree with that, and because of that you felt like not necessarily bad, but not in tandem with everything?
So good question. If you are a beneficiary of a certain system, does that mean that you don't, I mean, they use this phrase very often, right? Don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? I think I don't believe in that, I don't believe that, let's say there's this hand that feeds you, but that hand also beats you. I used to say, because you're feeding me, I shouldn't make any noise at all about the fact that I'm also beaten by you. Yeah, I think that's a very abusive relationship that you get into. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but a lot of abused spouses also have those kinds of rationalizations. He gives me money every month, but so does that mean I'm perpetually in thrall to this person? Yeah. So I think, I've never felt that, in any way that I've been, I don't know, maybe a traitor to the system or anything, that I've gone rogue or whatever. In fact, I think I'm being faithful to what are my responsibilities as an artist, which is to speak truth to power, always.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for a wonderful time. I just have a few quick announcements. So if you'd like to, keep this conversation going with Alfian, please join us. There's a reception downstairs at the meeting room. We have some food, finger food for you guys. If you have any comments or any feedback about tonight's program, you can write to info@center42.sg, info@center42.sg. And finally, Center 42 is participating in the Singapore Night Festival this Saturday with late night texting. So enjoy 15 short performances of plays, poetry and improv musical theatre all over this blue house. It begins at 7 p.m. this Saturday, and that's it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.